Dr. Kelvin looking as dapper as always. Typical Dr. Kelvin. We're going to have this conversation with him this morning. As you know, Dr. Kelvin, good morning, by the way.
Good morning,
Dr. Kelvin.
Good morning.
As you know, we've been having a very serious situation with the breakout of Lassa Fever. It's been in the news the last couple of days, and somebody has already passed on, from it. And we want to find out what is Lassa Fever, and what do we need to know, and how do we protect ourselves in these times? After COVID, right now everybody's antennas have come up, and it's looking at how to protect themselves with whatever is going to come, So now we're going to find out about Lassa Fever. Dr. Kelvin.
David.
How are you?
I'm very well,
Charlie, but today you sat down. I mean, what's the occasion? Why are you going after here?
Oh,
because it's not because of us that you should.
It's because of you.
Yeah, but earlier on you called him the guy with the panache.
With panache, yeah.
So why are you surprised that he shuddered?
Oh, well, I mean, no, but this one is great.
I'm going to work. I'm going to attend to my amazing clients. So I have to look the part.
Wow.
Nice. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to have you as well. This is my first time meeting you.
Yeah.
Charlie, what do we need to know about Lassa Fever? What is this whole Lassa Fever business? I mean, we're there, everything was nice and quiet in the country. Well, not quiet, but at least managing what we can manage so far with all the lack of vaccine challenges and all those things. And then suddenly we hear Lassa Fever has been found in Ghana.
I mean, it's not a new thing. I mean, it's been around. It's a West African virus, and it's been around for a while. I think the first time it was documented was somewhere in the 1950s. In fact, it gets its name from Nigeria, and the town in Nigeria where it was first discovered. So that's where the name comes from. So Lassa fever. So it's a viral infection, and it's part of the haemorrhagic viral infection. So you have its other cousins, including Ebola, even yellow fever. So they all sort of they are in a category called the viral hemorrhagic fevers. Even though they are not the same kind of viruses, but they sort of have similar consequences, which includes the bleeding. So that's typically one of the late features of Lassa fever. So you have bleeding from various orifices, so the nose, the gums, the anus. But eventually, every opening can begin to bleed. So that's one of the later symptoms of Lassa fever. So as I said, it's not new in West Africa. In Ghana, we've been spared the most of Lassa fever, but in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, for instance, I mean, these are areas where almost every year they have to deal with some form of Lassa fever. Yes. Now, even though, I mean, if you went on the internet and you read about it, they will tell you that the case fatality is only about 1%. To say that if 100 people were to get Lassa fever, only about one person would die. So it makes it seem like it's not a serious thing, but it is a serious thing, because if 100 people were to be admitted on account of Lassa fever, 20 of them would die. So it tells you, so once you change the focus, you realize it's actually a big deal.
Wow. Wait, so how does that work? Because if you say 1% and it's jumping to 20%, what does that mean? I mean, how does that happen?
So it tells you that, I mean, there's a wide range of presentations. First of all, about 80% of people who actually get infected would typically not develop serious disease, and most of them will not even know they were infected, so they will probably recover, without ever reporting to hospital, But of the few people that would develop severe disease, then the fatality rate goes up significantly, from 1% all the way up to 20%. So that's
is it contagious?
It is contagious. However, it's not as contagious as, let's say, common cold, even though they are all viruses. So typically, let's take it from how you get it in the first place. So it's actually an animal disease. So it's called the zoonotic. Zoonotic infections are infections that can jump from animals to humans. But the reservoir of the infection is actually the rat. So I think, yes, it's safe to say that it's pretty much
people eating.
That's one way, but that's not the most common way. The most common way of getting infected is actually from rats playing around your food.
Oh, okay.
Food.
Yes, their droppings, their urine, so they secrete the virus through they expel the virus through their secretions.
Okay.
So if a rat, let's say, you store your food, your cans, or whatever, and then the rats come around it, they pee on it, they poo-poo on it, and you don't clean it. You know, so I remember way back in primary school, our teacher, there was a lesson where we were taught that when you pick, let's say, a can of milk, before you open it, you have to wash it with water.
Yeah.
I never understood it until medical school.
Oh.
You know, so this is actually one of the reasons why it's important to
You
wash.
can't just take a can and open
it.
Exactly,
and
no, it's unacceptable. It's not allowed. You know, because and especially if you live in a place where there is an issue with rats.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty much the story of a significant part of our urban, even rural areas. You know, because the rats come in, they eat their share, they play with the rest, and then they go away. You may not see them, but sometimes you can actually smell that they've been here. You know, and so if you ignore all these things and you just open your can and start eating, you are exposing yourself to some of these things, including Lassa fever. You know, and now that there is a confirmed, in fact, there are confirmed cases in Ghana, you want to be extra careful. You see, because it is spread that easily, and you see the rats population, they expand or they multiply very, very quickly. So if there's Lassa fever in the rat population, the risk of it spreading is very high. And so right now, everybody, even though only 2 cases have been recorded, we all need to be on high alert, you see, because, I mean, it's difficult to control the rats. So you have to mind what you are eating. Very, very important.
So does that mean, okay, yeah, some people might say, yes, I don't have rats in my house, but obviously that means when you go out to buy stuff from, you know, the convenience stores, maybe we're buying sardines and, you know, canned food, any sort of food, that means you can also contact it from there, even though you have no rats in your house.
Exactly. And so the lesson is that everybody needs to clean your cans before you eat it, because the convenience store might have a rat problem. Yeah. So the fact that you don't have rats in your house does not mean you are safe. So you have to clean your cans, every can, whether it's milk, whether it's sardine, whether it's anything basically, you know, can expose you to the virus, and so you want to avoid that.
Can you imagine these people that do chibum?
Exactly.
In the nights.
Exactly.
Chibum and tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they open their can.
Open
their can, you know, and then they don't clean it before they open their can.
And it's not just limited to cans. Everything. I mean, anything. Let's use. I mean, the spaghetti. Yes. You know, if the rat has peed on the package, you know, you open it up. Remember, you are holding it with your hand. You open it up, and then as we do, you break it with the hand that's already contaminated. You break it into the pot. Yeah. You know. And
so do we wash the spaghetti
it's right there in the pot.
So to be on the safe side, virtually everything, you know, everything is at risk. So I mean, the ideal thing would have been to find a way to prevent the rats from coming into our homes in the first place. I don't know how that is feasible in the short term, you know. So right now we all need to be on guard, you know, very important. But that is just one way. So that's how it gets into the human population. When it comes into the human population, it can also spread from person to person. You know, and in this regard, this is spread through, again, secretions. So usually close contacts of the infected person are most at risk. You know, so secretions like vomiting, like urine, like exactly, all these things can transmit the infection from one person to another person. You know, so if somebody is demonstrating any symptoms that are suspicious, you know, if you are not trained to handle it, you need to avoid contact as much as possible.
What about sweat?
Sweat, they typically would not, you know, so they would say that, I mean, you can actually hug
somebody.
So
it's like a lot of conditions that are spread like through droplets. Sweat seems to be an area that somehow...
And we should be happy that it's like that, because that would be a problem.
The large organ or skin is a large organ.
When it comes to COVID, in the gyms,
but that's not from sweat. That's usually from, you know, when you're expiration, and when you're talking, I mean, it's droplets all over the place. You know, I mean, if sweat was part of the thing, would
be finished.
I'm telling you, you know. So yes, thankfully, sweat is not really a major source of transmission, and we are happy with that.
All right. So when it comes to the severity, like in the news that we read about, you know, the 2 persons that, you know, have been found that have this disease. I mean, 1 person died. So rest in peace. But his age was age 40. Like, does it have to do with age? For it to say, okay, maybe it's severe with people of certain age group.
Or maybe underlying conditions.
So typically, I mean, people who are at the extremes of ages are always at risk in some of these things because they most of the time are not able to take care of themselves by themselves. I don't know if that's a good phrase. You know, so they depend on others, and so it makes it a bit of a challenge. And then they themselves are already undernourished. You know, so somebody, a very old person, typically has comorbidity. So that person is probably diabetic, so the immune system is already challenged, and then gets an attack by this virus. So it's not able to mount a defense enough to resist the attack from the virus, and so they succumb to it. So extremes of ages are always at risk. People with hypertension, people with other medical conditions have a higher risk. People who already have HIV, for instance, have a problem with their immune system, so they also tend to be at risk. You know, so I mean, this is a time for everybody to be each other's keeper. You know, if you are feeling anything that you are not too sure what's going on, you need to always go in for a checkup, and then let's see how we can attend to you. Because I did mention that if the disease is severe, you know, in people with severe disease, the fatality rate is almost at 20%. You know, so it means that how early we're able to get intervention helps improve the outcome. You know, but of course, if everybody was if everything was as clear cut, it wouldn't have been a problem. Here is the case where most people who even have the infection will never even know that they have the infection. You know, and then those who even show symptoms, the symptoms are so non-specific until it becomes extremely severe. You know, so as it is with most viral infections, you probably just have a simple, you feel like you have a cold, you have a sore throat, maybe some chest pain, so non-specific, you know, so it's not like there's no classic symptom that you feel and know that this is Lassa fever, let me quickly go and get treatment, you know, and I don't know why it's always like that. You see, I mean, a bit of headache, tiredness, you know, throat is a bit scratchy, and then you go in, and then suddenly in the later stages you start bleeding from your gums and your nose.
It's at the point of the bleeding that now
you know
it becomes obvious that there's something. This is no longer flu.
Exactly.
Yeah, because and you know, when we have flus, like, we tend to just sit back and just say, okay, let me just do some home treatment.
Yeah.
So would you say it's best for you to just isolate? Because it was after COVID that I realized that it's actually very important for people to isolate when they feel certain ways. But I know that, things are hard, people are hustling. So no one even wants to tell you they're sick these days.
I know,
they're just in the middle of, they're just in the middle of everyone else and just doing their thing. So what would you say? Would you say would you say it's best for people to isolate or just keep moving on with their life?
I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, to be honest. I mean, but what I'll say is, you see, we are still in the COVID, and I've said in the past that COVID, it has been a kind of blessing, because now there's a culture where people even get the ordinary cold, common cold, and then exactly. Yeah. So that habit has become a part of us, and it's really going to help going forward. You know, or if you yourself, you feel like I'm going into a crowded area, let me protect myself.
Fact, Dr. Kevin, it's interesting how you can walk into a shopping mall and a few people will be wearing their masks, and it's normal. It's like it's not looked upon strangely.
Exactly.
Which I thought, wow, in Ghana, this is impressive.
You know, so that's I think that habit should be encouraged, because it could help us a lot. Because even if you did touch something, because of that COVID mindset, your probability of you going to wash your hand is higher now than it was in the past.
And the use of sanitizers.
Exactly. You know, and so all these things can help us even in dealing with this as well. However, what I'll say is that, I mean, everybody has had a common cold before, and most of us know how it feels when you have a common cold. You know, you'd have headache, you know, maybe a day or two, you know, the nose will start running, and then you recover after a couple of days. You know, but if you have a similar presentation, but it's a bit more severe than it used to be, then you know that you should be asking questions. Could it be COVID? Could it be that? Could it be Lassa fever? You know, then you go in. And you see, again, this is where we need to be each other's keeper. You know, if you are feeling such severe symptoms and you go into hospital, it's always good to, you know, sort of give accurate information so that the health personnel can also protect themselves early enough. You know, we are in a resource poor setting, right? And so it's not possible for the health personnel to be always wearing
PPEs.
The PPEs, because if we were to wear PPEs, trust me, it wouldn't even last a week. You know, so most of the time what happens is that we wait to be notified of what's going on before, you know, we put things in place. So if you're experiencing some of these things and you go in, you know, it's good to communicate quickly. Yeah,
but are there test kits and vaccines for it right now? Because obviously now with COVID, you can just walk in and they'll test you and say, okay, you're positive. But are there test kits?
So, you know, this is also a social problem. I mean, once you hear rats and all these things, it tells you that it's pretty much a poor person's... So that sort of sets the tone for where I'm going. Now,
I get it.
Now, because of the challenges when it comes to these, and it's a West African problem.
Yes.
You see. Now, who should be funding those research to now lead to the vaccines coming out? That's the challenge. So even though there's research ongoing, it's taking a long time. I mean, like I said, the first case was documented as far back as 1950. We are in 2023. So it's taking us this long, and we still don't have a vaccine. Thankfully, we have treatment available, even though the treatment needs to be started early. So the earlier that intervention is started, the more likely it's going to make the positive impact that we are hoping for. So reporting early is important. Early recognition and identification. Unfortunately, again, before COVID, diagnosing this was quite challenging because it needed PCR and other things. But now, thankfully, thanks to COVID, we have a few PCR machines, and so diagnosis is a bit faster, even though it's still slow. It's much faster than it was in the past.
Yeah.
You see, so we are getting there painstakingly slowly. But we are making progress.
Right.
All right, Dr. Kelvin, thank you very much for this. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm active on social media, Kelvin Owusu MD, on all social media channels. Okay. And you can also reach our clinic as well, Claron Health International, and we will definitely attend to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Dr. Kelvin Owusu of the Claron Health International Hospital. Well, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. There's more to come.